Legislative District number 7, which is the northern part of Arizona. And we have seen the unraveling of civility here in the United States in the last year and a half. In recent weeks, our country has taken a horrible and brutal turn in policy. Unfortunately, many of us do recognize this United States. For our dear family and friends that are not minorities or people of color, it is just beyond their line of sight, just at the edges of their peripheral vision. This type of acts by the government. This press conference is a call to action. A call to action literally for the soul of America. The members of the Arizona Legislature's Indigenous Peoples Caucus are here today. Representatives Sally Ann Gonzalez and Representative Winona Benali, and not joining us today, but who has signed all 5 letters that we have sent out to the Trump administration, to Speaker Paul Ryan, to congressional leaders, and then also to the governor of Arizona, our representative Eric Deschini of the Navajo Nation as well. We call upon our tribal nations in Arizona, the United States, and indigenous people throughout the world to unite, to plan a cooperative and continuous collaboration for our children, on behalf of our children, our families, and our elders. As state leaders, we are each members of an indigenous tribe. All the tribes in the United States interact with the federal government and with their respective sovereignty. Therefore, in respect to our indigenous nations, we are responding to our constituents' call to bring all these unique and independent tribes together. The atrocities being committed now at the southern U.S. border are being committed by the ancestral descendants of those fleeing their own countries in the past 500 years. But this is still the sacred land of the tribes, and this is still Indian country. And non-action is not an option for us as indigenous people in the Americas. Many are caught in the border nightmare. They are of indigenous descent, citizens of nations in Central and South America that are still being victimized by their governments, much like our North American indigenous people in past centuries. Those governments in Central and South America are not blameless. Today, as U.S. citizens, Arizona citizens, and legal constituents, we must all denounce the Trump administration's immigration maneuverings. Governor Doug Ducey's support of the inhumane treatment of human beings here in Arizona, and congressional leaders' refusal to do the right thing and reunite families. A sacred teaching we are all taught is that we have a duty to each other, to take care of one another. And this press conference is a step in that direction. It takes you, me, our children, our neighbors, and yes, all elected leaders in this great democracy. A democracy founded on the beliefs, philosophies, and the practice of the very first Americans. I'm going to go ahead and call up my colleagues and invite them to speak. We also have with us today that will be speaking is the Honorable Vice Chairman of the Pascua Yaqui Tribe, Vice Chairman Yucapicio, and we'll move forward from here. So I'd like to invite Representative Winona Benali up to the podium to speak. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. My name is Winona Benali. I serve as the state representative for District 7. I'm honored to be joining my colleagues today to speak out against the atrocities our government is committing at the southern border. As Indigenous peoples, we've seen this before in our history. And I want to convey to the public that this is happening yet again to our communities, to our children. I want to tell you a story. In August of 2017, Maria was 6 years old when she was separated from her mother, Magdalena, by Border Patrol agents near El Paso. I didn't understand them, she is quoted as saying. Maria and her mother speak Acateco, an indigenous Mayan language. She stated, quote, "When they took my mom, I got scared and didn't understand anything," unquote. Magdalena and Maria have not seen each other since. Magdalena has since been deported back to Guatemala. Magdalena fled Guatemala with her daughter to escape from her husband who threatened to kill her. She had a bona fide, viable asylum case, and yet she was deported. Maria is now being taken care of by her aunt, and her aunt has this to say, quote, "I am worried because Maria is starting to lose her native language." Period. In an AP story this past week, a 4-year-old child detained in a facility in Texas didn't speak Spanish, but Quechua, a language indigenous to Guatemala. It wasn't until after an attorney started asking questions that the 4-year-old child was later reunited with her aunt. A 16-year-old was taking care of her, changing her diapers. Speaking about the 4-year-old indigenous child, the 16-year-old teenager said, "She was so traumatized that she wasn't even talking. She was just curled up in a ball." Magdalena, Maria, and this young 4-year-old child are among hundreds, if not thousands, of children who have yet to be reunited with their families. While Trump may have reversed himself yesterday on separating families, the zero-tolerance policy remains in place. And we've seen absolutely no details on how or when these families will be reunited. I want the public to know that Indigenous children are among those being rounded up and detained. We are once again experiencing the horrible policy of forced removal of our children. This is cultural genocide and is a direct violation of our human rights.
Good morning. I'm Representative Sally Ann Gonzalez from Legislative District 3 in Tucson, and I would like to introduce our Vice Chairman, Peter Yucapicio, that is joining us here to say a few words. And could you spell your name, please?
My first name P-T-R, my last name is Y-U-C-U-P-I-C-A-O. My name is Peter Yucapicio. I'm the current Vice Chairman of the Pascuachi tribe. It is sad today, this morning. It is sad in this world that we have to put up with these tragedies, these things that can only happen sometimes in times of war and times of great depression. For us, I think, the mother and the child is so important. It is very important that they nurture each other, they grow with each other. But who, if not the mother, is the first teacher of these children, regardless of race, creed, or color? And yet it happens today. With a supposedly fix the president is trying to do, it'll never fix their heart, their body, their mind, their soul. That will remain trauma for the rest of their lives. Para nosotros es una tragedia lo que pasó a esta gente que viene buscando una vida mejor. Vienen siendo lo mismo que cualquier otro vino de Europa, del África, de Sudamérica, de otros países, para hacer su vida mejor, para que sus hijos algún día tengan lo que ustedes tienen, el sueño americano, the American dream. Everybody should be privileged to be able to live that life, the American dream. we as some of the first Americans, some of the first peoples that walked in this sacred land, asked all the tribes to unite and gather and let their voice and their heart and their soul be heard in this time of need. This is a world need. This is a need that doesn't stop because there's a border. It doesn't stop because there's this president or the next. We must continue to fight for racial equality and make sure that they can live their life as they wish to live. Los Mchoku Tesi, on behalf of the Pascuaki tribe and all our children that are going to come in the future for 20, 30 generations and on, I hope this never happens to them. And it probably does because some of us live in the South. And when they come, I want to tell you a story. We own land where some of the border crossers come. The saddest thing that I had to go do as the chairman of the Pascuaki tribe is go identify a mother and a child under a mesquite tree, and she was holding her baby, and the baby was dead. Both of them were dead in one of our properties. That is so sad to know that they were afraid of a process and the treatment and everything, so they resorted to try and get in another way, and it cost them their life. I beg all of you to make your presence, your voice be heard on behalf of all of us. Thank you. God bless you all. And God bless all those children that are still separated and have to find their parents. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Yucupicio. I joined my colleagues here with the Indigenous Peoples Caucus to let the public know our stance on the atrocities that humanity is facing. These are individuals, these are peoples that belong to a community. We have to remember that these families and these parents are coming here for a better life. Their lives are being threatened in their communities, whether it's by their own government, whether it's by their abusive family member, whether it's the drug cartels, whether it's MJ-13 that has been talked about a lot these days. They are threatened. Their lives are being threatened by all of those or individuals, and we have to put ourselves in their place. Who of us would do that? Would risk losing their lives in order to cross the border, in order to trek 3 countries, in order to cross a desert and lose their lives because the intimate threat of their lives back home? None of us would probably do so. So we have to think about why they're doing it. We really do. We have to put ourselves where they are and walk a mile in their shoes. I am really happy that the country, the people have moved the president to stop separating the families. But we must continue. We must continue to be indignant about what's happening at the border. We need to be vigilant. We need to continue to press that the immigration issue be taken up. We need to continue to press that the children, 2,000 plus children that have been separated from their mother or their families, be reunited immediately. And we have got to, here at the legislation and in Congress, stop funding corporations that benefit from the detention of these human beings. We have got to do that. And so I ask all of you to please continue to put it on Facebook, to write to the president, to your representatives in Congress to please, they're supposed to vote on an immigration bill today. Please contact them and tell them what your views are on these horrific things that are happening at the border. And I thank you all for being here, the press for being here. Please share our information, our press conference, because we need to be able to get to the masses, or these atrocities are going to continue on our American soil. It is un-American. Vice Chairman Yucupicio said that we have people on both sides of the border. We have families that we go visit on a monthly basis, semi-annually basis, and we do not want this to happen to our families. We do not want Tohono O'odham have people on both sides of the border, and we want to address that issue with all the tribal nations. Please, again, my colleagues have already mentioned it. We need to unite as indigenous people to tell the people what our own people are going through, and this is unacceptable. This is un-American, and we need to stop it today. I thank you, and I think we can take questions if there is any.
Question, part of this whole equation too is getting, and any of you can answer it, getting to the root of the problem. The problem is these people are being threatened with their lives. Has there been any consideration to talk to the UN, look to the UN to send peacekeeping forces down there to stop, to help, quell the violence? And you want to tackle that?
Well, I'll go ahead and speak. As far as being state legislators from here, we are all part of the indigenous tribe. And so this press conference is to ask for exactly for all tribes in the United States, the 500 tribes that are part of within the United States, the tribes within Arizona, the Navajo Nation, which is a sovereign tribe, to come together and start forcing our hand in the planning of how to resolve this issue. It is a complex issue, and it is not going to be solved overnight, but with our leaders and our spiritual leaders as well, that there will be a way that we can maneuver through this. And
I would like to add
to the microphones. Thank you.
I would like to add that both Pasquayaki tribe and lots of indigenous tribes here in the U.S. and in Arizona, especially Pasquayaki and Tohono O'odham, they have sent representatives to the UN in 2 months ago in April for the Indigenous Planetarium for indigenous people, and those are the issues that they brought up. I know Tohono O'odham member David Garcia, that is his biggest concern, is what's happening in the border with Tohono O'odham and his people that live across the border. And so they, the government, the U.S. policy with Ambassador Haley announcing, what was it, last week, that they are removing themselves as members of the United Nations Humanitarian Council. I mean, that is wrong. If we need the U.S. as members of that organization, it is now because of what's happening right now. But just to follow up on your question, we have sent representatives, and we do talk to them on at that annual event, but also throughout the year.
But how about the idea of troops? Would that, do you think that's a good idea to send troops, peacekeeping troops down there?
Well, peacekeeping troops. Certainly, I think we ought to send, members from here, from the U.S., to as peace watchers. Militarizing communities and the border is an issue that's very difficult to talk about, and that I probably wouldn't be willing to just say willy-nilly, yes, we ought to send military, but observers and peacekeepers to these indigenous communities, and is certainly something that we ought to do, and we'll see where that goes to. Thank you. Any other questions?
No, further ahead.
Okay.
I do want to also add that Representative Sheeny and I are actually going to be traveling to Geneva in about 2 weeks to attend one of the sessions at the UN. I don't know the name right off the top of my head. It's I think it's expert mechanism on human rights. So we will absolutely be addressing this issue there. There's the UN Declaration of Indigenous Rights, protection of Indigenous peoples' rights, and there are provisions in there to ensure the protection of children, and that's something we are discussing with many of our colleagues, community members who are going to Geneva. Certainly the individuals who are coming to the border do have those rights recognized internationally.
One other thing is, I know there has been interest from tribes verbalizing their wanting to be part of the UN, become part of the United Nations Council. So I'm not sure exactly where that is with each tribe, but there is definitely a strong interest there, especially like on behalf of the large tribes and the sovereign treaty tribes, and there's indigenous tribes throughout the world that show that interest.
Do any of you know if there are any groups that are helping reconnect families and children right now?
I think there are several groups. I can't offhand give you the title, except that I know that the is helping with reuniting the families and watching this very carefully. They're the ones who have been really at the forefront and doing lawsuits to stop the separation of families at the border, and so we hope that they continue to do